Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles when you
Chase
show up.
Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got him at
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
Well, all right. Welcome back into another edition of Operation Domination. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mader. Make sure you download the show on your favorite podcast app or check out our video content when you go to the YouTube channel on the Fantasy Football Advice Network at FF Advice Net. It's injury inquiry time heading into week 6. And I counted it, Brian, and I'm up to 24 players for you this week, and 2 teams are on bye. So I didn't even include those players this week. Like, wow. Woof. Yeah, woof is right.
That's all I have to say.
As always, I'm joined here with the one and only Mr. Dr. Brian Scott. Thank you so much for coming on the show like you always do every single Thursday. But we have too much to get into any pleasantries here, so let's just dive into it.
Let's do it.
Lamar Jackson, hamstring, anything.
Oh, it's not looking good, and I kind of needed him on one of my rosters. And I think they're doing the wise thing here. I don't think they should rush him back. Did we talk last week about when their bye was? I forget. I think originally I had said they might try to hold him out until the bye week.
Yeah, it was week 8.
Yeah, so I think that's realistic. I mean, look, week 6, right? He hasn't even practiced, I don't think, this week.
No.
I don't foresee them trying to get him ready for week 7 if they have a week 8 bye. Like, it just doesn't make sense. From a logistical standpoint, from the injury standpoint, that's not an injury you want to rush back. Like we've talked about numerous times, high re-injury rates. The longer you can rest him and allow him to recover, the better off he'll be. And he's dealt with injuries over the last few years, and they seem to always happen in the first half of the season. And then the team goes on a big run toward the end of the year, and he looks great. So I think that trend will continue. They're going to hold him out to that week 8 bye. I don't think we're going to see him. I think it would be foolish on their part to try and rush him back.
Well, they're going to need to go on a run. Plain and simple. Like, they're going to have to go on a run because this team's 1-5, 1-4 now.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens after this week, but that's the only reason why they would maybe try to bring him back before that bye week in week 8 for week 7. I don't see that being the case. We talked about it last week. Lamar Jackson is dependent, especially for fantasy purposes, on his legs. You don't want him coming back before that hamstring is actually healthy, because otherwise you're not going to get the Lamar Jackson that you need and what you drafted for. Is it ugly with Cooper Rush? 100%. But the good news there is that, look, we saw a week with Cooper Rush, and Zay Flowers was fine. Not fantastic, but fine. 5 catches, 72 yards. You're going to have no problems with that. It still makes him a startable fantasy asset in half-point and full-point PPR leagues, which is all you care about at the end of the day. Mark Andrews wasn't doing anything with Lamar Jackson anyway. So, like, right now, if you can find any way to benchmark Andrews, you need to do so just out of lack of production, no matter who the quarterback is. The problem has been Derrick Henry, because without Lamar there to help sustain drives, and for whatever reason, Todd Monken just doesn't want to build the entire offense without Lamar Jackson around Derrick Henry. I have no idea why that's not the case. Part of that, though, is the defense is so bad, it's hard for them to stay in games, but they have to do something. Your best player on the field that's healthy is not even touching the football. And maybe when Lamar Jackson comes back, that gets better. Maybe Derrick Henry, as a result, is a buy low option right now, but I have him at running back 20 because of the way this offense is without Lamar. It's unfortunate, but I do think you have another week without him. Let's go to San Francisco, because, we got to mention him like 50,000 times on this show all the time.
Wouldn't be an injury update without somebody from San Francisco.
Yeah, seriously. Don't worry, there's multiple. Okay, so Brock Purdy still dealing with the toe issue. Do you have any progress on that?
Just that apparently a lot of questions have been coming toward Coach Shanahan's way, asking why not send him on to IR and make a roster move or do something. And they're saying, nope, we're not considering that at this time. they're just buying time, and I think they're going to ride Mac Jones till they get all they can out of him, and give Brock Purdy as much time to rest as they can. They're kind of in a tough spot here. You've got two quarterbacks who are, capable, but you want to ride with your starter, Brock Purdy, and you initially were trying to go with the least injured of the two, and that is not going to work. Especially till their week 17 bye, whatever the hell it is. So they did the smart thing, and they're trying to buy Brock Purdy some time. The turf toe injury is we said it's not a true turf toe, but it's a variant of that. These take a long time to heal. They rushed him back prematurely because Mac Jones got hurt. Now they're trying to ride Mac Jones as long as they can to buy Brock Purdy some time. I think that's the right move. Unfortunately, Mac Jones becomes the sacrificial lamb here. If they're going to ride him until he can't go no more, and then hopefully by then Brock Purdy will have recovered, they'll be back in. But tough call here for San Francisco when you're dealing with two capable but both injured quarterbacks.
Yeah, it really is. And so this is the expectation. Brock Purdy misses this week. Mac Jones is the starter, who he himself is barely practicing. I think he was did not practice on Wednesday, limited today. The reporting around that is they expect him to start. So we do expect him to play. And for fantasy purposes, look, on one hand, he finishes a quarterback one last week. I don't know how the 49ers pulled that game off, but they did. Mac Jones was an absolute warrior, and he threw the ball all over the place and did whatever he wanted to do with none of the weapons around him besides Christian McCaffrey on top of it. He is a streaming option. This is a game against Tampa Bay where there's expected to be a high over-under for the total on the game. So points are going to be had. Here's the issue. One decent shot to Mac Jones's knee. I don't know how he continues to play. I can't believe he found a way to finish that Rams game. He looked completely battered. And now on top of the knee, it sounds like he's dealing with an oblique issue too. So it's another injury on top of it.
Yeah, that just kind of popped up today. That came out of nowhere. Like some type of rib or oblique injury they were saying. A couple different reports came out. They'll probably, if he lost his left arm, they'd still probably have to put him in there. Like it's gotten that bad.
Because, again, the backup to him is Adrian Martinez, and nobody knows who he is still, other than mentioning the fact that he's never played an NFL game. I right now have Mac Jones as my quarterback 14. I think he is a streaming option, but that injury lingering is why I don't have him inside my top 12, even in a game that may project to have a lot of fantasy points this week. Here's another quarterback update. Kyler Murray with a foot issue. He hasn't practiced the last 2 days. What do you have here?
Well, not much as far as what the actual injury is. I'm thinking it's some type of sprain. Some reports initially said that it wasn't that bad, but they were being cautious. He's a mobile quarterback, relies on his feet to scramble, get out of the pocket to open up some throwing lanes. So I think he's going to play. All reports are trending in that direction, despite the fact that he hasn't practiced. So I am banking on that. I think whatever the injury is not severe enough that it's going to keep him out. So we'll have to see if he does do anything on Friday. I think he's at the least going to suit up and do some walkthrough stuff. I wouldn't expect a lot from him at practice. We're kind of getting into that territory this season, especially as a quarterback who's been with that organization for a long time, where he doesn't really need to be on the practice field to prepare adequately for Sunday. He's a good athlete to begin with. He got through many seasons playing, Nintendo 64 and PlayStation.
Yeah,
so
he'll
be fine.
Extra games. Yeah, 100%.
He'll be fine.
yeah, sure. Here's the deal with Kyler Murray. He has stunk even when he's healthy so far this season. Like, he's been awful for fantasy. He hasn't even been in streaming territory for quarterbacks because he's not running more like he said he was going to, like you need him to do, because he's an awful passer. Kyler Murray is not a good quarterback as a thrower, period. There can't be a discussion about this anymore. I'm watching him every single Sunday. It's not just not being able to see over the line. It is lollipop throws, completely inaccurate, 24/7. So if he's not going to run, he's worthless. Now, I think Kyler Murray is actually a drop in most leagues moving forward, regardless of the health. Now, if he does miss, Jacoby Brissett comes in for the game. I think that's actually an upgrade for Marvin Harrison. It can't get much worse as a thrower. And that's all we care about. Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride. Can we get these guys the football in rhythm? Just once. It's been awful to watch this Arizona offense. And some of this is on Drew Petzing. The play calling's been horrendous all season long. Nothing's in sync, just like it wasn't last year, too. I don't know how much longer we can go on like this. I don't know why they won't fire him. I think it's coming in as a scapegoat at some point this season. But it's been brutal. So I don't know how Jacoby Brissett is even necessarily a downgrade as a thrower. We'll have to wait to see what happens, but you need to go with a different option with Kyler Murray, regardless of health, is my overall point. Murray and Hampton. Oh, yeah. Brian, Najee Harris was out of the way. Hampton was back to getting a bell cow workload. He went off against your Giants, looking like he was finally going to get going for fantasy purposes. And then he picks up an ankle issue, and they put him right on the IR for at least the next 4 games.
Yeah, it was surprising to see that happen so quickly. And then we were talking about this off camera, that the actual play on which he got injured apparently looked pretty innocuous, didn't look like your traditional type of ankle injury mechanism. So it leads me to believe that it was serious enough that they were like, we're not even going to risk it. Just put him on IR. We'll make whatever necessary roster moves we need to make to fill the void, and we'll make sure he's right before he gets back on the field. Now, possibly it could have been a high ankle sprain. Sometimes those involve some rotational forces that happen. So I haven't seen the play, but I'm just guessing here that could have been part of what happened at the moment that the ankle was injured. And if it was a high ankle sprain, as we've talked about a lot of times before, they take a long time to get better. So maybe they were just like, let's not even mess with this. He probably had a significant amount of swelling, and they're like, let's just get him on IR. Let's rehab him, get him back so that we can make a run deep into the season and a playoff push here. So it is surprising. You don't really see that very often, where a guy will literally go straight to IR on what they're terming an ankle sprain, So it leads me to believe that there's a lot more to it that they're probably not going to share. And again, even if the play looked innocuous, it doesn't take much to cause a high ankle sprain. That's why it's like with the foot planted and fixed in the grass or turf, a little bit of rotation can cause injury to those particular ligaments that are involved in a high ankle sprain. So without seeing the play, I can't say for certain, but I mean, I don't know any other reason, unless there was a fracture that they're not reporting, why you would so quickly pull the trigger on an IR stint or a traditional ankle sprain, unless it was like so severe that they just knew there was no way that he was going to be ready. I mean, and that is not very common with a traditional ankle sprain, even in these guys. So I'm kind of at a loss for why the sudden trigger on IR, but I mean, that's what I can only speculate.
Yeah, first of all, it's Jim Harbaugh. So we're never going to get like a full actual detail of what the heck's going on. That's one of the problems there. It was a weird injury. So I saw the play. The defender was, Martin Hampton was out on a swing pass, and the defender just came crashing down the line, and they collided feet. Like, first of all, Dr. Brian Scott's the best medical doctor on social media. But the other ones were even out there posting right away how they thought Martin Hampton was going to come back at the game. And then when he didn't, they're like, well, he should be back next week. Like, no one thought this looked like a serious injury in any kind of capacity. That's why it's so odd that suddenly he's on the IR. And because we're getting left out in the weeds on the details, because it's the organization that it is, we're just left to speculate. The only thing I can say is that both Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport reported that based on their sources, the expectation is that as soon as his IR stint is done, he would be back, which means he'll be back week 10, according to them. But that's the only information we have to go off of.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this too before. That doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, so you think the guy's going to be ready right away week 4. Well, what if he's ready in 3 weeks? Now you've put him on IR. You've shot any possibility of that happening. So you're essentially limiting your ability to bring him back before that. 4 games, not 4 weeks. We always have to mention that. So it doesn't make much sense. I don't know who their sources are. I never do. But to say that after you put him on IR so quickly, it just those are two very opposite kind of statements to make in this situation, I feel, because if you felt that he had a chance to be back right at that 4-week mark, I would have taken some time. They didn't have to put him on IR right away. They could have retroactively done it. They could have given him a week to get ready and rehab and see where he's at and kind of get better assessment of how he might be progressing through the recovery before they pulled the trigger on IR. Don't forget, they're not mandated to put him on IR immediately. They can do it retroactively. So that's why that doesn't jive in my book.
Yeah, it's very strange. I'm with you. The whole thing about it is weird. There's definitely something I feel like we're just purposely not being told, which is why we're getting left out in the dark here to some degree. The only thing I could think of is that because he's a rookie, and this is a team that expects to be in the playoffs, they were like, look, you need to be 100% healthy. When you are back, we're just going to make sure that you are. We're not even tempted to bring you back early. Because again, as a rookie, he's probably going to push a little bit harder to play sooner than necessarily he should. I mean, look, I'm just trying to think of the only logical way that this would even make sense.
That's possible too. They might have been protecting him from himself by doing that.
Right. Maybe that's the case. The point is that for now, and the Chargers don't have a bye week till week 12, so 4 games in 4 weeks will be the same thing for them. For now, we're looking at Hassan Haskins and Kamani Vidal. They're going to have to bring somebody else in just to fill out the roster. I don't think it's going to be Gus Edwards for the people who are mentioning Gus Edwards. There's a reason why he's been left out on free agency for as long as he has. I don't think he's got anything left. There was hype last season for Kamani Vidal. And I'm not saying it's not possible now, but early projection would suggest that Hassan Haskins is the guy you want to own. Maybe there's an outside shot that Vidal is able to up his game from what we saw a season ago. Hassan Haskins doesn't move well. I don't expect this to look good. But at the same time, when we had a small sample size of this instance last season, when Vidal had a chance, it was Haskins over Vidal in that scenario as well. Now it's a year later. We'll see what changes, but Haskins has been the backup to Najee, to Amari, and Hampton this entire time. In fact, Vidal wasn't even activated until Najee Harris got hurt. Now, Haskins does play special teams, and that's partly due to that reason, but he's probably going to be the guy who gets at least the early down work and potentially the goal line work. Maybe Vidal can carve out that passing down role, which is what we're hoping for. My thing, the way I approach this, and I have Amari and Hampton in a lot of leagues, I didn't go after either one of them that hard. The Chargers were not running the ball well, even with Amari and Hampton out there. And until that offensive line gets healthier, I don't know how much either one of these guys is going to produce. So I'm okay with not even owning them, but if you have to pick one, right now I'm leaning towards Hassan Haskins, but that's open to change. Don't ink me into that. What's going on with Bucky Irving? Is there any updates here?
I saw a recent report, I can't remember if it was today or yesterday, saying something now about a separated shoulder on top of his foot injury, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's what I got you.
To just throw more fuel on the fire. I don't know what that means for him coming back. It didn't sound positive, like he was going to be ready this weekend anyway. So now I think we're going to have to wait and see about week 7. But yeah, I mean, he was the last report I had seen. He was in a boot on crutches, and then all of a sudden he comes out with this shoulder issue as well, which just complicates things. So I don't have much more about the details of the injuries as far as his foot and ankle go, but the shoulder apparently was some type of shoulder separation or something with the shoulder, subluxation or separation, I forget. I don't know where that came from. That came out of left field. So I think we're going to have to wait and see what happens next week. I don't think we're going to see him this week. They may have even already officially ruled him out.
If they haven't, it's going to be coming soon. So this is what was crazy to me about that game. When Bucky Irving got hurt, when I saw him get hurt, it looked to me like the shoulder was what was bothering him. I was actually more surprised when he got, put down with a foot and they said he was in a cast and everything like that, because it looked like to me the shoulder was what was bothering him during that game. So I don't know why it took a week for that piece of news to come on out, but it's Todd Bowles, and talk about guys. Jim Harbaugh won't tell anything. Todd Bowles will just flat out lie to you. So you have to just know what's going on here with some of these head coaches. Here's the deal. We know that Bucky Irving's out. We got confirmation last week that Rachaad White is in fact the bell cow back when Bucky Irving's out. Sean Tucker's nothing more than a backup in this offense. And while Rachaad White again, not the most efficient runner, gets 2 touchdowns. We'll get those red zone looks. We'll get the passing work. He is a must start high-level RB2 as long as Bucky Irving continues to miss time. Is this running back going to continue to miss time? Chuba Hubbard with the calf issue.
Well, so long as Rico Dowdle keeps putting up 200-plus yards, I think he will.
Oh, Brian, I was so mad. So a couple of people I was playing against had Rico Dowdle just sitting there. And for him to go off 200, like, I know the Dolphins stink, but 200 yards out of Rico Dowdle, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah. Well, the Panthers are going to ride that wave until it, crashes, which is probably going to be this weekend. And I think we'll probably see Chuba Hubbard back next week. It sounds like they already said he's going to miss this week. They're going to give him that extra week to rest that calf. I don't think it's a serious issue, but again, because Rico Dowdle played so well, they're just going to give him an extra week. And I think they've actually made that official as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I know Chuba Hubbard did not practice today. I don't know if they officially ruled him out or not, but here's the deal. Dowdle, even when Hubbard was on the field, was already getting the inside the 5 looks. I don't know what made him the goal line back, but that was already kind of happening. So even when Hubbard comes back, this might be more of a committee than you were anticipating when you drafted Chuba Hubbard, which means Dowdle might be a flex play and Hubbard might be more of a high-end RB3 play even upon his return. They got a match against Dallas coming into this week. Dowdle is a top 24 running back for me against Dallas, who has not done well stopping the run nor the pass, frankly, for that matter. So you could play him with confidence. Antonio Gibson, we have yet another ACL injury on the season.
Yeah, tough break there. Confirmed ACL injury. He'll be out for the year. This is a tough time to have that injury because now it puts into question the start of next season. Then you start pushing out week by week. When is he going to be ready? Will he be week 5, week 6, week 7 next year? It's going to go pretty far into the season, at least a third into the season, before we see him cleared and possibly ready to step back on the field. So it's a tough one because it's essentially almost like 2 seasons.
Well, it's essentially almost 2 seasons for a guy who's already kind of a bubble roster player to begin with. So those years of Antonio Gibson might be behind him. I hope it's not, but this could potentially be a career killer too, just because I don't know how many more opportunities teams would even give him, being that there weren't too many giving him a chance before the injury, frankly, in the first place. I mean, he was a 3rd-string running back on the Patriots getting some work because McDaniels is driving us all crazy with this committee over here, but nobody else really wanted him. So I worry that this might be a career killer for him. This would consolidate the work for Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson, both of whom I have as RB3s, Stevenson a little bit higher. I know everyone's screaming. I don't know what to tell you guys. Stevenson apparently can fumble multiple times a game. There's only so much that they're willing to give to Travion Henderson. That part is clear. Now, I do think it's a little bit funny because I got reamed on social media in the offseason about calling out the fact that Henderson is an overrated pass protector. And that has been, by the Patriots, the number one reason why he has not been able to take over the job is because he has lack in pass protection. They don't trust him there. But at some point, if Ramondre Stevenson continues to fumble the way that he is, they're going to have to pivot. I know Travion Henderson has not played well, even with the opportunities that he's had, but this is crazy. Like, you can't keep coughing off the ball the way that Stevenson has. I mean, this is worse than Tiki Barber back in the day, Bri. Like, you remember those days?
Yes, he had a case of fumbleitis. Yeah.
This is worse.
Pretty bad one. He had a real bad one. Tom Coughlin was the guy that corrected that thing.
He was. McDaniels is not going to do it. He's just going to bench him eventually. So right now, I think you have to play Stevenson over Henderson, but it's a crapshoot as far as how that all plays out. Jalen Warren, he had a knee issue before the bye week. Do we think he's going to play?
I think he's going to be ready. There was some talk that he was back to practice and doing some stuff, and I think the bye week was what they were aiming for, getting him back that following week. So it sounds positive. Don't know if he did anything new today at practice, but I think he was out there in a limited fashion earlier in the week with the thought that he was ramping up and going to be available.
Yeah, I had double checked the injury report, and he's not even on there. He didn't really even show up on the official. So I think he's definitely good to go. Remember, it was kind of weird. Like, it was London, he was supposed to play, and then suddenly he was just like a late scratch type of deal. I think he will be good to go. He's got a tough matchup against the Cleveland Browns, but when he has been healthy, at least those couple of weeks leading up into that London game, he had taken over a huge work share. Like Kenneth Gainwell wasn't necessarily that much involved anymore. Now, it wouldn't surprise me in this game, first game back off the bye week, that maybe we see a little bit more of a split like we did between these two back in week 1. But Warren, because I'm anticipating a healthy workload, even against the Cleveland Browns, I still have him as a low-end RB2 heading into a week where you have two teams on bye. All right, what's going on here? So Alvin Kamara has an ankle issue. What do you think we're going to see out of him?
Well, I think he's going to be available. I just don't think we're going to see him get the full workload, especially with their other running back. Was it Kendre Miller?
Kendre Miller, yeah.
Kendre Miller, sorry. Playing pretty well. Alvin Kamara's had some ankle issues in the past. It doesn't sound like this is serious. I think he actually had some limited practice already today. So they're expecting that he's going to be available. I just don't know if we're going to see him get the bulk of the carries this weekend.
Well, he's already started losing the bulk of the carries over the past few weeks anyway. His snap count has consistently gone down each week, and last week was no different. Maybe part of that was due to the injury during the game. But the fact of the matter is, and this apparently was right out of, Saints beat writer camp, Kendre Miller is looked at as the best running back on that Saints roster right now. Maybe Alvin Kamara gets traded somewhere. And that, if I'm a fantasy owner of Alvin Kamara, that's kind of what I'm hoping for. See, the problem is, I know he had 6 targets this past week, but the problem is he's not consistently being involved in the pass game like we thought he would be. When you looked at the Saints, you're like, all right, yeah, Chris Olave is going to get his targets. And then you figure Alvin Kamara was just going to be a safety blanket. He hasn't been an efficient runner for years now. That's not what we were counting on. But if he's not going to be getting 7-8 targets every single game like we're used to Alvin Kamara fashion being, well, his fantasy value takes a tremendous hit. And that's what we're seeing now, especially now Kendre Miller has been efficient with the opportunities he has been given. So Alvin Kamara, to me, right now is no more than an RB3. And I would actually hope you had other options to be able to pivot to, because there's not much upside that's coming with him at the moment. Miles Sanders, knee and ankle issue. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, I don't think he actually practiced today, according to most of the recent reports. It sounds like he was a DNP. And they were saying earlier in the week that there's a good chance he's probably not going to be ready. He might be a true game time decision, depending on what he can do as the week kind of winds down. So not good news if you can't get on the practice field on Thursday with 2 body parts injured. And then Friday usually just kind of being a light practice walkthrough day. So I don't think we're going to see him. He's probably going to have a questionable tag, but he could be ruled out kind of last minute right before kickoff.
Yeah, so if he's out, Jaden Blue takes his spot, and Javonte Williams continues to being the bell cow that he is. A top 5 running back in fantasy, Javonte Williams. Who'd have thunk it? Let's talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't think we're too concerned here, but whenever a player like this, who's number 2 wide receiver in fantasy football, cops up, I feel like we got to mention it.
Yeah, he's been banged up a little bit over the years, but this doesn't sound like it's anything serious. He's trending toward playing. I think he might have been limited a little bit in practice, but it doesn't sound like it's a major issue. We should see him Sunday.
That's good news. Like I said, number 2 guy, Puka Nacua. We need this guy out there, especially in a matchup this week against Kansas City Chiefs. All right, so CeeDee Lamb, ankle. What's the update here? Are we closer to getting this guy back or what?
I think so. I'm still not certain it's going to be this week. It may be an additional week. I know he was doing some stuff in practice late last week. It was more on the side, kind of doing his own thing, then took another day or 2 off after that. So it sounds like he's kind of working his way back slowly. Again, this is one of those things, until he can get a full practice in, I'm not so sure he's going to be ready, though.
Talk about a guy who probably should have just went on IR. Like, I mean, I think we're coming up on 4 weeks now. Like, come on.
Almost, yeah.
Just kept our hopes up for absolutely no reason. In his absence, George Pickens continues to be the wide receiver 1. And so that's still a thing. And then Kavontae Turpin, who I'll have you talk about in a second, but with him also looking like he's going to be out this week. Jalen Tolbert played more snaps, but Ryan Flournoy, he was the second guy as far as the wide receivers are concerned. So is George Pickens, is Jake Ferguson, and because they're throwing the ball and Dak Prescott is playing as well as he is right now, Ryan Flournoy, especially in deeper leagues, he's got a chance to be a legitimate pickup. So don't overlook him. But talk about Kavontae Turpin's foot issue.
Yeah, not exactly sure what the nature of this injury is. It sounds like it's a sprain. It doesn't sound optimistic that he's going to be good to go. I don't think he's actually practiced at all this week, and that's despite some updates in some of the injury reports later today. So I think that it's tentative at best that we'll see him this weekend.
Yeah, from the reports that I was seeing, it sounded like the game plan was for him to miss this week and potentially return next week. That's a lot of the reports that I was seeing myself. Mike Evans, is he ever going to come back?
Well, so there's another guy that probably should have just gone straight to IR. They should have pulled the trigger on that right away. I mean, he's an older player, skill position, hamstring issues over the years. No different this year. It doesn't sound like he's going to be ready. You got Egbuka, the rookie, playing out of his mind. Godwin's healthy. I don't see any need to rush him back, so I don't think we're going to see him again.
I mean, he's just. So here's what's annoying, and for those who play in sleeper formats, you understand this pain. Instead of like every other format, when a player's out, you can put them on your IR spot and open up a roster spot. But in sleeper, no. They have to actually be on IR to go on IR. And you're just holding these guys who have been out and they're just clogging up your roster. And it's insane because you can't drop Mike Evans, but you're left here with your thumb twiddling around because you can't, there's nothing you can do. It's driving me crazy. Just put him on IR. What's the problem? You said it, Brian. Emeka Egbuka is a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. Chris Godwin's more of a wide receiver 3. So he got the heavy target share the first week he came back. It came down a little bit the second week. You can tell he doesn't quite have his legs under him. And he really shouldn't have expected him to anyway, but he is still a featured part of the offense, which is why I don't have him lower than a wide receiver 3 tier type player. But I wouldn't expect too much upside against San Francisco this week. Here's another one I'm still waiting to get some kind of stupid update on. Terry McLaurin. Like what? Like, can someone get me like a little drop-in beeper on these people? Because I feel like I'm getting no information this season.
No, actually, I think this is actually good news with him.
Okay.
It sounds like he's actually ramped up some of his activity, and could be getting ready. I don't know if he practiced yesterday. I think he might have been limited today, but it sounds like he is slowly improving. I just don't think we're going to see him this week, but I think next week might be the week he comes back.
Yeah, so McLaurin did not practice today, but to your point, it did sound like he was starting to ramp up his activity a little bit. So I would say at least one more week with no McLaurin, and he'll be back on the report again next week. You guys should know the drill by now. With McLaurin out, Deebo Samuel, also a top 12 wide receiver, running routes for the first time in his career and doing pretty well, especially now that Jaden Daniels is back. It gives them a little bit more upside, and they have a great matchup against Chicago this week, which could be a high-scoring affair as well. So something you want to get in your lineups. Now, outside of Deebo, it's been kind of a mixture of Jalen Lane and a little Luke McCaffrey here and there. Maybe Noah Brown might even return this week. We'll have to see. I'm not touching really any of these other Commanders receivers because there's too much distribution going on for anybody not named Deebo Samuel at the moment. Back to the 49ers. All right. Let's start with maybe somebody who potentially has some good news. Jauan Jennings. Seemed like there was some movement on him.
Yeah, he practiced in a limited fashion today. So that's
you got him.
Because he didn't practice earlier in the week. So
how about that?
Might be inching his way back onto the field and maybe checking off a box on that new contract he got to get on the field. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. So, and then talk about Ricky Pearsall real quick, and I'll dive into it.
I mean, he was doing some stuff on the side with like a sleeve or brace on his leg, which is not surprising. He didn't have a full practice. I think it's going to be a little bit longer before we see him back.
Yeah, so he didn't practice today or yesterday. Jauan did officially get a limited session in on Thursday today. There did seem to be more optimism that maybe Jauan plays from the reports that I was getting. We'll have to see how it all shakes out. Because to your point, I mean, he hasn't practiced much at all last couple of weeks, and he only got a limited session in today. So I would definitely not feel good about his odds to play. He just has better odds to play than Ricky Pearsall does. If they miss, especially with Mac Jones starting, it's clear Kendrick Bourne's the favorite target right now of Mac Jones. And if he doesn't have Jauan out there, and he definitely won't have Ricky Pearsall out there this week, well, then he's got a decent target share heading his way. Again, I mentioned this earlier. It's a high over-under between San Francisco and Tampa Bay. Points are expected to be scored. Now, I don't think Kendrick Bourne puts up his career high like he did a week ago against the Rams, but is 80 to 100 yards on the table if he is the main target? Yes, that is 100% on the table. So right now, Kendrick Bourne, I'm looking at him as a solid play wide receiver 3. And because his name's Kendrick Bourne, he's still available on quite a few waiver wires out there. So if you need a spot start, that could be a direction in which you go to look for. He's definitely ahead of Demarcus Robinson. I wouldn't waste my time with him, even if he is the number 2 in snaps. Darnell Mooney, are we getting close to a return on him? Did I lose you, Bri? All right. I can see your face, but you're not talking. Oh, I think we might have lost Brian there for a second. So I'll see if we can get him back in. But in the meantime, I'll give you guys what I have on him. And my note is that he's likely to return. I think we are actually going to see Darnell Mooney this week. I don't know if that's a good thing. So even with Mooney back, I still look at him as a wide receiver 4-tier player right now. The Atlanta offense has just been wildly inconsistent, and that's kind of been the issue to this point. Let's see if we get Brian back on this one. Yeah, so Brian, I was asking you about Darnell Mooney. What's the update on him?
Yeah, sounds like he's also inching his way back. He's been kind of ramping up his activity as well. He was dealing with a hamstring issue. Prior to that, he had a shoulder issue. I've been waiting for him to step back on the field. I'm not sure though that he practiced today in full. I thought he was doing some stuff this week, but I'm not sure. He might have taken a day off today. He might not be ready again this week. So we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that. But their original reports earlier in the week were saying that he was kind of trending in the right direction. So maybe he took a back step or a little setback here.
Yes. No. Yeah. He did not practice today. They're calling him day to day, and they'll see what it is. So we'll see tomorrow. I mean, we record this on Thursday, so you're going to probably hear this on Friday, but the Friday practice is going to be a big indicator of Mooney's going to play. I was just saying before we lost you there for a second, that Atlanta's offense has been so inconsistent that even if Mooney goes out there, I'm not viewing him as anything more than a wide receiver 4 player. And if anything, he's just kind of a hindrance to Jake London and Kyle Pitts right now from getting targets that makes them fantasy relevant at the moment. So maybe one more week out wouldn't be such a bad thing for all fantasy players involved. Are we going to see Jalen Coker making his season debut?
I haven't gotten much information about what he's been doing at practice, but I do anticipate that he should be coming back soon. He hasn't done anything yet this year as far as play. And Dan, you could probably help me out more on this one. I haven't seen much as far as reports.
Yeah, so he was a full practice yesterday, and he practiced again today. It is shaping up like he is going to make his return. This is a weird one for me. So again, Jalen Coker really only pops up on my radar if I'm desperate or you're in deep leagues. But he does have a little bit more upside down the road from that because we have seen Bryce Young latch on to his slot wide receiver, whether that be Adam Thielen or Jalen Coker in the past. Now, on one hand, I don't know how much I want to tell people to go out there and grab the number 2 target on a terrible passing offense. That's what the Carolina Panthers are. And I don't think Tedero McMillan would suddenly become the second target with Jalen Coker returning. But I will say that the only area of the field that Bryce Young can target consistently is that short middle range of the field. So for PPR purposes, it does get a little bit intriguing. If you have a spot, maybe a speculative ad is okay for Jalen Coker. Alec Pierce, is he finally going to return?
Well, I thought he was actually going to be back last week.
I know.
He was ramping up. It looked like he was going to be cleared. And then all of a sudden, he didn't practice on Friday and was not cleared from the concussion protocol, which was kind of surprising. But he got a full session in on Wednesday, and I believe he practiced again in full today. So here we are, kind of right where we were last week. Now he's got a clear concussion protocol still, but they're sounding positive again. So I'm not sure what the setback was.
Can the Colts just trade Donnie Mitchell? Like, I get he made a mistake the week before, and then Ashton Dulin, took his spot with Alec Pierce out. Donnie Mitchell's a talent. Don't let him waste away as the number 5 receiver on the Colts. Please trade this man. I just had to get that off my chest. I do expect Alec Pierce to be out there, so it should be Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, and Michael Pittman. Pittman being the only one who's a must start heading into this week. It is a nice matchup again for the Colts, who are just moving the football up and down. They're not scoring a ton of touchdowns, but they are moving the football up and down. Christian Watson, there seems like there's some movement here.
Yeah, so don't forget he is coming off an ACL injury. And this is a guy who had a pretty significant hamstring issues the year before, where he was like training with a hamstring specialist in like Wisconsin and stuff. So it sounds like he's working his way back. I don't think we're going to see him yet this week. He is in that 21-day practice window from coming off of PUP IR. So it could be any day now, could be any week now, but it doesn't sound like he's ready just yet. I would expect him to do more next week before we kind of get a better sense of whether he'll be back.
And just add one more target to the mix in Green Bay to make it just that much more murky. Trying to figure out who you really want to play in that offense. There's 2 guys who've been consistent. Romeo Doubs is consistent in that's possession safety blanket type wide receiver for the team. Not always sexy for fantasy, although he did have the 3 touchdown game before the bye week, but is going to play a certain role where you can at least predict the usage that he's going to get. And then the other player is Tucker Kraft, especially amongst tight ends, but he seems to have carved out a pretty consistent role within this organization as well. Everybody else is up for grabs. Now, Matthew Golden has seemingly taken the next step up with Jaden Reed out of the picture for now. Reed is expected to come back at some point later on in the season. You add in Christian Watson, and I think all that would do for now when he returns is eat into Dontavian Wicks, who has not really been fantasy relevant anyway. So I don't think it hurts Matthew Golden. I don't think it hurts Romeo Doubs. I don't think it hurts Tucker Kraft. I think the only time that any of the other players that you've been kind of circling gets just some usage taken away would be Matthew Golden when Jaden Reed returns. Then it kind of gets a little bit more interesting. But for now, all these guys are, Dobbs like a wide receiver 3 that you can kind of plug and play in a spot start situation. Tucker Kraft's a top 5 tight end. He needs to be in your lineups. And Matthew Golden is also a boomer bust wide receiver 3 type of play for now. Tight ends, Brock Bowers, any update there?
He didn't practice today. I think it's going to be at least another week or 2 before we see him doing anything meaningful on the practice field and possibly working his way back into the lineup. They're going to take it slow. Turns out that he had, I believe it was that PCL sprain, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, I'm sorry, bone contusion along with the PCL sprain. And the bone contusion is the thing that's really going to slow down his recovery because those take a while to heal. You don't want to push through those. And they've got to make sure that that thing has completely healed before they let him start doing anything real aggressive and high impact on the field. So it's going to be at least probably a couple more weeks.
Oh, woof. I mean, Michael Mayer's going to be back this week. That's what the reports are. But, man, don't draft tight ends in the second round, kids. That's all I can tell you. And look, I'm not saying that because that was my advice. And I was not projecting injury for Brock Bowers. That certainly was not the reason. But it's a position in which if you invest heavily into early in your drafts and it doesn't hit, it can be devastating because of what you missed out on with the running backs and the wide receivers that were available to you at that point. It's roster construction. That's why if you miss there, it's hard to make up the difference. It really, really is because you're already going to be behind the 8 ball in one of those other key positions anyway. Oh, man. Plus, the Raiders, awful. Like, Geno Smith is at a complete loss. Josh McDaniels looks like he's at a complete loss. It's absolutely crazy. All right, so let's move on here. Brenton Strange, he talk about a player who got put on IR. He got put on IR right away with a quad issue.
Yeah, well, so initially they were saying quad. Then it turns out that it might actually be more of a hip. So it might be either a hip flexor.
Well, first they said hip and then they said quad.
Right, yeah, or whatever, vice versa. But yeah, so who knows? I mean, it could be a quad because your quad does cross your hip. One of the major quad muscles goes across your hip. So who knows? Hip flexor, quad, hip pointer, we don't know. But yes, IR stint, 4 games. And then we'll see what he's able to do when he gets back. But I'm not exactly sure the extent of the injury, but my guess is it's probably some type of proximal quad or hip flexor strain or something pretty significant.
Yeah, so I mean, he was kind of like in the streaming tight end territory anyway. Hunter Long comes in. He's popped up a little bit this season with a couple touchdown catches here or there. I'm not expecting Hunter Long to make himself fantasy relevant to the point where you're actually rushing to go ahead and pick him up. I think the hope would be for most fantasy owners is that if Brendan Strange is out of the game, there'll be more emphasis on getting the targets over to Brian Thomas, the targets over to Travis Hunter, and seeing where we're kind of going from there. All right, so we're back off the bye for the Bears, and Colson Loveland, who is dealing with a hip issue. What's the update here?
So he returned to practice in a limited fashion, and let's not forget they play Monday night, so he's kind of bought himself a little extra time, and I think they're coming off a bye week as well. So he's had, some adequate time to recover given the extra time frames there, and he's expected to be ready. So he's got his limited practice started already, and he should be ramping it up in anticipation for their Monday night game.
Yeah, so this is what's hard about Loveland. He's not playing enough. Now, teams sometimes make adjustments coming out of the bye. And there's two adjustments that the Bears really need to try to make. Figure out if DJ Moore is part of the future plan, because you're not really utilizing him at all to this point. And if you're not going to utilize him, then why not see what you got in the young kid that you drafted in the second round of Luther Burden? And then Colson Loveland falls in this category too, because the problem that you're having now is that Cole Kmet has been the starter. Not that he's been productive, but he's been on the field like 90% of the time, almost every single week, even when Colson Loveland was out there and healthy. Until that changes, until Loveland gets on the field more, he's got no shot to produce, even though he is set up perfectly within that offense with his skill set to be a fantasy asset. But we have to see him get on the field more. We'll see if they made those adjustments during the bye week or not. But we're in wait and see mode for Colson Loveland. All right, George Kittle, hamstring. I've heard movement on this point. This might be my one hope as a San Francisco 49er fan, if something's moving in a positive direction. What do you got?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I think he was placed on IR, and I don't think they've activated his 21-day practice window yet, though, which means he hasn't stepped on the practice field with the team yet. Now, that doesn't mean he's not on the practice field. He could be doing stuff on the side. But in order to get into practice with the team during team drills and stuff, you have to be off IR and into the 21-day window. I think John Lynch said that it's probably going to be next week, if I'm not mistaken. So it sounds like he might be doing some activity, but they're going to really ramp him up next week in hopes that they can get him back for week 7.
Yeah, so from one understanding falls along the lines of what you're saying. He is finally back out there doing things on the side field this week. They didn't bother opening up the window because they knew they weren't going to play him this week anyway. It sounds like to me the expectation is that they're not only going to open up the window, but that he's going to come back and play week 7. That's kind of what's being reported here. So they give him that one extra week, and then he should be good to go. So George Kittle, week 7. Finally somebody coming back. In the meantime, Jake Tonjes, who had 11 targets and has, ever since his game-winning touchdown against Seattle in week 1, has emerged as a legitimate weapon that Mac Jones can turn to. He is my tight end 12 on the week. So he just slides into my tight end 1 tier. Tampa Bay, again, we're looking for weapons. You're going up against Tampa Bay. You're going to have to score points. Maybe no Jauan, definitely no Pearsall, definitely no Kittle. Kendrick Bourne and Tonjes was the second favorite target of Mac Jones. I say you just roll with it and stick with it. It's something you could actually stream. Hard to find. For the first time ever on this show, I'm going to talk about a kicker. And the only reason I am is because this guy was the number 1 kicker in fantasy football until this past week. What do you have on Spencer Schrader?
Yeah, so he's headed to IR with an ACL, MCL injury. He'll probably require season-ending ACL reconstructive surgery. I believe it was his kicking leg. I'm not sure if that's better or worse, but nonetheless, looking at 9 to 12 months there before you're doing any type of football activities. Now, as a kicker, The question is, when do you start kicking? And I don't know if I got a good answer for that because, and here's why, Dan. Well, initially a lot of doctors would really restrict what we call open kinetic chain exercises, which are basically exercises that involve or that where your foot is not fixed on the ground, right? So the kicking motion is a classic example of that. Knee extension exercises, let's say. Now, the reason for that is it creates a tremendous amount of shear forces on the knee joint, and that's the worst thing you can do with a reconstructed ACL ligament is put extra shear forces on it. That'll just cause it to tear or stretch and become incompetent and possibly require a second revision reconstructive surgery, which you don't want. So you need to have enough time for that new graft or ligament to heal properly before you allow them to start doing those types of exercises, i.e. kicking. So what time frame that really falls under is hard to say. It's usually at least 6 to 9 months before he's probably going to be able to do any kicking. Now, being a kicker, you don't really have to do much as far as running routes and all that kind of stuff, but you still got to be in game shape. You still may be asked to make a tackle. So now you're asking him to get ready to do that as well. So you're kind of looking at probably closer to 9 to 12 months. If they restrict his kicking, if that's his kicking leg, that could push the timetable back even more. I mean, this might be more of a devastating injury to a kicking leg on a kicker than it would be to a receiver or running back, just because of that. Now, there has been some literature that has come out recently, or at least within the last few years, that it kind of gives a little bit of pushback on letting athletes do some more open kinetic chain type exercises as part of their rehab earlier on in the rehab process. But a lot of the old school guys are still very dead set against it for good reason. There's a lot of good literature out there that supports it. So I don't think they're going to stray too far from that regardless. I think it's still going to be, you're going to be looking at that probably 12-month mark.
So I kind of bring that up like I said, one, he was the number one fantasy kicker, so it was warranted. I know not every league out there anymore has kickers, but there's still a good amount that do. And it's funny, when you're ranking kickers and projecting kickers, a lot of people think there's a ton of variance to it. And a lot of people think it comes down to like the talent of the kicker. There's actually not as much as you would think. So when I rank kickers, a lot of it is really just based on opportunities provided by the team. How often are they lining up for field goals, not getting touchdowns, but moving the ball into the opponent's territory? And then the same thing goes to the defense. How often they allow teams into their territory, but maybe they're tough on the red zone. So a lot of that is what goes into it. I say that to say this. Michael Bagley is now going to be the starting kicker for the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are a perfect offense for opportunity for the kicker, where I would not be surprised if Michael Bagley was able to wind up as a top 5 kicker while the Colts offense is still playing the way that it is, despite what you might think of his talent. It's less about talent when it comes to the kicker. Just kind of want to lay that out there. Not something we get to talk about a ton on this show. Brian, as always, I love you coming on, man. Thank you so much. Tell people what they need to check out that you have coming up and where to follow you.
Yeah, so, I've been trying to get out a quick little 15 to 20-minute podcast episode every Tuesday. I try to release it Tuesday, which means I'm doing it Monday night around the time of the Monday Night Football game, trying to just summarize all the weekend's injuries, just to get fans and fantasy footballers some early injury news and updates on some of the things that have occurred over the weekend. And that seems to be going pretty good. So I'm going to try and keep that up. And you'll find that on any podcast hosting platform that you listen on podcasts. The Injured List podcast, I've been doing that now for the last couple of weeks. It's been going pretty good. And then I'll be, joining you on Thursday nights, TSS Fantasy Friday and Sundays. Sunday mornings, we do a quick last-minute warm-up update right before the kickoff. So check that out at That Sports Podcast Network. And as always, right here on your show, Dan.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on again. Guys, make sure you're downloading Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app and check out our video content on the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. I'll be back tomorrow. Best bets, Chaz Flaherty back on the show. So we're going to try to line your pockets green while also dominating your fantasy football matchups. We'll see you then.